Life, wisdom. Breakfast cereal, the cornerstone of every nutritious breakfast. Or is it? Today we're talking about cereal and telling you everything you need to know to get healthy, lose weight, whatever it may be, and where cereal plays a role in your health and weight loss journey. So let's start with the Froot Loops. Probably one of the most common, most widely asked for cereals out there that's on the market. But is it healthy? Is it something that we want to give to our kids? Let's just take a look at the ingredients and figure out what that answer is. So we've got sugar, we've got a corn flour blend, wheat flour, partially hydrogenated oil, salt, red 40, natural flavor, blue number 2, yellow 6, BHT for freshness, and I just selected a couple of the ingredients there. There actually are some others. So first off, this has sugar listed as the first ingredient. That should just be a red flag to you that this is not a healthy food, okay? Minimally, this could be a dessert, but it certainly is not a healthy breakfast, and especially not for our kids. Then we go on to these processed flours, a corn flour blend, wheat flour. These processed flours, these processed grains, again, are not really doing any favors to us when it comes to our health or our waistlines. And I have a lot more discussion about these processed flours in my Big Mac video. The glycemic index of Froot Loops is around 69, somewhere between 69 and 74, depending on which glycemic index you look at. Again, I have a whole video on glycemic index if you would like to see that. But suffice it to say, these are highly processed grains that really are not good for you in the first place. And then they add insult to injury with things like yellow 6 and blue number 2. These artificial colors, again, are something we want to avoid, especially when we talk about things that we're going to be giving to our children. So what about Cheerios? Because Cheerios have the little heart-healthy advertisement on the side telling us that they're healthier, but is it really true? So in the ingredients, we've got whole grain oats, cornstarch, sugar, salt, tripotassium phosphate, wheat starch, and vitamin E. So right off the bat, we can observe that this is a significantly smaller ingredient list, and we don't have all of the artificial colors and natural flavors and some of those other weird chemicals that we saw in the Froot Loops. Now, I should point out, though, that when we have cornstarch as the second ingredient, this is basically like having corn sugar, okay? Taking the sugary part from the corn, isolating that down and using that as the second ingredient. So even though it's maybe not quite as bad as the Froot Loops, which had sugar as the first ingredient, we do have the second and third ingredient, cornstarch and sugar, which again, for all intents and purposes, are basically sugar. Now, interestingly enough, Cheerios are actually higher glycemic than Froot Loops. They're actually going to spike your blood sugar levels more significantly than Froot Loops. So these are around a 69, these clock in around a 74, 75. Couple reasons for that. First off, the Froot Loops contain the partially hydrogenated oils. Okay, so there's more fat in the Froot Loops, which lowers the glycemic index. And then also on these Cheerios, because of that cornstarch, okay, and because even though we have the whole grain oats that are in there, that cornstarch and wheat starch, again, is going to spike up the glycemic index. Those starches are going to be a lot more sugar for us to ingest. So I would say that Cheerios are maybe a slight step up from Froot Loops, but this still is really not a healthy breakfast option. So let's see if we can find something that is. What about grape nuts? Okay, so once again, we will take a little look at the ingredients. So here we have whole grain wheat flour, malted barley flour, salt, dried yeast, and then some added vitamins and minerals. So maybe you're noticing a progression, which is a shorter and shorter ingredient list. Okay, so the grape nuts are less processed than the Froot Loops and the Cheerios over here. Okay, so we do have that whole grain wheat flour. Now, oddly enough, grape nuts are the same glycemic index as Cheerios, even though there's no added sugar to them. And so what I think this is important to kind of indicate or show us is that it's these processed, any kind of processed cereal, okay, processed flour that's been turned into a cereal is going to be a high glycemic food, okay, and is going to be potentially dangerous to us in the cases of diabetes or something like that, or maybe you're trying to avoid high GI foods, or just if you're trying to lose weight, in which case you should be avoiding the high GI foods. So once again, grape nuts, maybe a little step up again from these guys, but still really not what I would consider the cornerstone of a nutritious and healthy breakfast. Now, I don't have any Special K or cornflakes here to show you, but I can tell you that once again, both of these cereals are in that medium-high glycemic index range. Okay, so the take-home message that I think is really important here is that most of these box cereals, if not all of these box cereals, are made with some kind of processed grain, whether it's rice, wheat, or corn. And once we start processing these things and refining them, even if we're just refining the oat fiber, which is one of the ingredients in Special K, or the oat bran, which is another cereal in and of itself, these are still highly processed grains. And what that ends up meaning to our health and our waistline is that these cereals are highly glycemic. They're high in sugar, which means they're not going to help you lose weight, and they're not good for your health either. But is there any cereal that is decent for us to eat for breakfast? In my opinion, the best selection or the best choice is going to be some kind of granola, because this is a minimally processed food. When you have granola, you are not processing the grains into flour and then reshaping them into cornflakes or something like that. You're actually just, and you can even see them in there, you just have the rolled oats. Now, the glycemic index of rolled oats is around 50. So now you can see we've had a significant drop just having the natural, unprocessed rolled oats in the cereal. Now, this is actually a local brand of granola made by somebody who works in our office, actually his dad, and we just all love this granola. So I wanted to make a video talking about cereals and kind of telling you guys that there are some decently healthy options for breakfast type cereals out there, but usually they're not going to come in a box. So this granola, for instance, to read you the ingredients, organic whole grain oats, pecans, cashews, organic coconut, pure maple syrup, organic agave nectar, organic coconut oil, and sea salt. So now we have no weird chemicals at all. These are all natural ingredients. Okay, so first of all, we talked a little bit about the rolled oats, how because these are unprocessed, natural grains, they have a lower glycemic index. They're going to contain more fiber, more protein than any of the other boxed cereals out there. All right, and then we have all of these awesome nuts. Okay, pecans and cashews. Now I have a whole entire video where I've talked about the benefits of nuts and seeds and how these nuts give us really good sources of healthy fats. In addition, they help to lower the glycemic load of the cereal. So by having the grains with those healthy sources of fat, again, you've lowered the glycemic index of the food, or the glycemic load, which is like the cumulative glycemic index of everything in the meal that you're eating. Then we have our natural sweeteners, so pure maple syrup and organic agave nectar. I've talked a lot about sweeteners in the past. Again, these are minimally processed sweeteners. Okay, now in the case of agave nectar, there is a little bit of processing that goes into that as opposed to something like honey or maple syrup. But still, this is a much more natural and healthy sweetener than the cornstarch or high fructose corn syrup or just plain sugar that we find in all of the other breakfast cereals. Now, it is important to point out that not all granolas are created equally. So you're always going to want to just take a glance at the ingredient list and just make sure that there aren't any of these weird chemicals and preservatives, because even a granola cereal may still contain some of these weird chemicals or just be loaded down with sugar and artificial flavors. So you do need to take a little look at the label, but as a general rule of thumb, granola is always going to be a far superior option to the different boxed cereals on the market. This is not a paid product placement, and we are not receiving any payment for showing any of these foods here. Certainly Froot Loops isn't paying us to make this video. But we literally just love this granola, and I eat this granola all the time. I really do like it. It fills me up. It helps give me energy, what I feel gives me energy for even a couple hours after I have breakfast. So I really love this cereal, and I wanted to share it with you guys. We will include a link to Dad's granola down in the description so you can check it out. If you have a question about a specific granola or type of cereal, you can always reach out to me personally, and I'm happy to take a look at the ingredients and let you know my thoughts. I want to thank you so much for joining me today for this discussion of breakfast cereals. You can learn more about me at CorrinaRachel.com. I've included some links here of the videos that I referenced in the context of this video. If you have questions or topic requests, be sure to leave those for me below, and I look forward to seeing you all again soon. Thanks so much for watching.